the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast, brought to you by Thankfully GAMSAT. We're here to teach you how to smash the GAMSAT, get into medicine, and become a flippin' great doctor.
Hello, welcome to the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast, brought to you by Thankfully GAMSAT, where we help healthcare professionals like you take on the GAMSAT and get into medical school. My name's Dr. Tom Forfer, and at ThankFlip, we've helped countless nurses, paramedics, and allied healthcare professionals successfully take the leap into medicine via the GAMSAT exam. Whether it's about, balancing shift work, study, and life, we know that all that isn't easy to do, and you're not alone. And this podcast is here to give you the real talk, practical strategies, and inspirational stories from those who've done it before. So let's get into today's session. Today, what we're talking about are the practicalities of what you can expect on exam day. So what's going to happen, how it's going to run, where you're going to do it, what you're going to have, what you need to know. We're going to talk about all of that today. And the reason why it's important to cover this before the exam is because if you know what to expect, you can prepare for it. You can prepare yourself emotionally, mentally, but you can also get all the bits and pieces ready that you need. And we're going to cover all that today. I'm going to give you a few resources as well that are going to help you. Now, before I forget, all the resources I'm going to mention are going to be in our show notes. We're going to link them in our show notes. Now, to get those show notes, go to thankflipgamsat.com/episode 9, and they're all there for you. Now, a bit of a heads up. Right, ASA, the people that run the GAMSAT, they tend to change the exam format or the way that it's run every few years. For a while they didn't, but since COVID, they've been experimenting with different things. So this episode is really about the 2025 split GAMSAT. Now, although these are our podcast episodes, the idea is that we make them so that they live on and are relevant even years after being recorded. But this particular one might need to be updated if and when the exam changes again. But with that in mind, even if it does change, it won't be a dramatic change, right? So most of what you're hearing in this episode will be relevant, later down the track, whether it's 2026, 2027, and later on. But essentially what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you an overview of how the exam works. Then we'll talk about each section. I'll give you some common pitfalls. We'll talk about how to avoid them. And so that by the end of this session, you know what to expect and you're better prepared, or you can prepare yourself more effectively. Now, on that note, we're not going to talk about how to prepare for each section of the GAM, right? We've got other episodes where we talk about that, and I'll give you some resources here where you can dive deeper into preparing for each section. This is more about exam day, what to expect, and how it works and all that kind of stuff. So let's jump in. With that in mind, so what I want to do now is give you a little bit of background. Most people probably listen to this are doing it for the first time. And if you've done it before, have a listen to this anyway, because this might give you a bit of an insight as to why the GAMS is the way it is and what you can do to prepare yourself for it. So a little bit of background about the GAM. Right, back before COVID, the way that we used to sit the exam, back in the olden days when I did it, we used to do it on paper. Remember that? Paper and a pen and a pencil, and we'd all get together in a big exam hall once on the same day. We'd do all three sections on the same day, usually the third Saturday of March. Everyone would get together. It'd be happening on the same day around the whole country. It'd be done in these huge convention centers, like literally the Sydney Convention Center before they converted it. That's where I had my first GAMS. It was this massive hall, 2,000 people sitting in this hall with massive fans going to try and cool us off and trains going past outside. And but then COVID hit, and you couldn't have 2,000 people in a room all coughing, sneezing, farting on each other, right? So they canned that. And they made the GAMSAT, that COVID year, they made it an at-home exam. So the whole thing was done at home on via something called remote proctor. And that was a technical nightmare right? The system requirements, it crashing, proctors not turning up, going. It was a real terrible shit fight for them. And so very quickly they canned that, and they made it. They kept it as a digital exam, but done in computer labs. Right, and so you'd go into their computer labs with their pre-prepared computers all set up, working nicely, and you'd go and do it there. But then in 2024, they decided, you know what? We're going to split the exam up. Instead of doing all 3 sections on the same day, we're going to break it up into 2 sittings, and for the first time ever. And what they did was you do the essay exam, or the section 2, the written communication section. You do it at home on your computer at the start of March. Or if you're doing the September GAMSAT, it's done in August, at the end of August, that essay exam. Then 3 weeks later, you go into a computer lab or an office building where they've got all these computers set up for you, and you do sections 1 and 3 on that day. And so they trialed that last year for March and September. It seems to have worked for them because they're doing it again in 2025. So that's kind of how the exam works. That's kind of how it's evolved over time. Now let's dive into each section. And instead of starting with section 1, I'm going to start with section 2 because that's the first one you're going to be doing, right? So the essay section. So let's talk about that. So you're going to do this at home. And just to kind of give you a bit of an explanation of how that works, because I've had different kinds of questions about this. They use something called remote proctor, which means that you're going to log into a specific system. At the time that they tell you, you're going to log in. So you're not just writing an essay and emailing it to them, right? You're actually logging into their system. You're going to have to shut down all the different programs on your computer. You're going to have your camera on. Your mic has to be on. And beforehand, they'll get you to show them your room. So there'll be someone on there getting you set up, and you have to show them your room, make sure your mate's not hiding underneath the table, giving you the answers. You don't have, your notes plastered all over the walls. So they're going to check all that. Then you're going to have to keep your camera on, keep your mic on, and you're going to do the exam within their platform. So they're going to go, all right, ready, start. The time's going to start. You're going to be on that platform. And then when it's done, it's going to be done. So a couple of things to note about that. Their platform is a little bit weird, where there's no spell check, for example. So you're going to need to do a couple. We'll talk about the tips in a second. But just to let you know what to expect, you should expect to have some tech issues on the day. You probably won't. A lot of people do have tech issues where there's a delay in getting started, or maybe the proctor has a problem, or maybe the internet crashes or something. Just expect to have technical issues so that you're ready for when they happen and you're not stressed out. Now, chances are, again, there won't be any, but if you expect them, you'll come along kind of knowing that, if it works out with no tech issues, you're going to be happy. What you'll need to do in the lead up to the written communication section, you're going to need to make sure that you're doing your laptop or your computer is set up. Now, you can't do it on an iPad or your phone. It has to be on a computer or a laptop. And there's some tech requirements. You're going to need to make sure you set it all up before the actual day. Now, they're going to send you all the requirements for that and how to do it. And there'll be someone on the day they're getting you set up. Now, let's talk about the actual paper. Because the way it works, again, this mostly for people who have never done it before, you get 2 essay prompts in this exam. You get 65 minutes. Now, technically, they say it's 60 minutes of writing time plus 5 minutes reading time, but you can write through the whole thing, so it's essentially 65 minutes. Unless, of course, they change something on the day this year. Because you'll notice in their information booklet, they're not quite that specific about what you can expect. They give you thereabouts what's going to happen, and then on the day, they just kind of do what the hell they want. Or at least that's what it feels like over the years. So you're going to get 2 essay prompts. So you're going to have to write 2 essays within that 65 minutes. Now, each prompt has 4 quotations, right? And the quotations are all on the same theme. So essentially you get 2 themes, 2 sets of quotes, 2 different essays, 2 different topics. Now, the challenge is that the topics can be on almost anything. Where it can be things that have come up in the past are things like war and peace, censorship, the nanny state, the future, boredom, loving your pets, parenting, imagination, role models, technology, decision-making, risk, experts. And you don't get to choose. You just get these 2 essays you have to write on the topics that they give you. Now, it's going to be typed, right? You're going to be doing it on your computer at home, which some people like that because it's in the comfort of your own home. You can set up your environment the way that's comfortable for you. You don't have the distraction of other people typing. You have your own keyboard that you're used to. All of that is a positive. It's a benefit compared to how you used to do it, which was sitting in a room with 30 or 50 other people all typing at once on a keyboard you've never used before. So it's a lot better the way they do it now. Although some people find it's a bit weird to have to do this in a high-stakes exam in the comfort of your bedroom. So anyway, that's kind of what you can expect. But you also can have 2 pieces of paper and a pencil or a pen for this section to write your plan or your notes. You can also have, or instead, you can have a A4-sized whiteboard and markers to make your notes. So you're permitted to have that on the actual day of this exam. The other thing is, there's a demo platform that they give you when you register for the exam. I highly recommend that you practice and just play around with that thing for a little bit, just to get an understanding of how you'll be writing the essay on the day. All right, so that's the exam, the Section 2 exam. The common challenges that we see are things like running out of time. People spending too much time thinking about different bits and pieces, or what you could refer to as writer's block. Some people don't know what to write or can't come up with ideas on the essays, or they can't understand the quotes. But again, we're not going to go too deep into essay preparation and all sorts of techniques on how to address that. I mean, if you want that, go to our show notes, and we've got some free resources there on how to prepare for the essay section and what it's about. So that will help you there. All right, so then the essay exam concludes, and when that's done, they shut down the system and you go and have coffee with your mates or whatever you're going to do. Or more specifically, you should start honing in and getting more serious about your Section 1 and 3 study, because in 3 weeks after that, you're going to go into a computer lab or an office building where they have the computers there for you to do Sections 1 and 3 on them. Now, I was running a digital meetup last night about the essay section, and I got this question that I wanted to answer here. And the question was, I haven't received the location for my Section 1 and 3 sitting. Is this a problem? The answer is no. You don't select the exact location. You tell them whether you want to do it in Sydney or in Melbourne or in Brisbane or the major kind of city. But then a couple of weeks beforehand, they're going to send you the exact location. Right? So it's kind of like I just thought of those old school raves where, you don't know the location until they send it to you the day before, an hour before, and you go to some warehouse in the middle of nowhere. Maybe that's what they're trying to do there. No, but what's going on there is they need to logistically I imagine they need to coordinate, where we're going to put all these people. So they wait for everyone to register, and then they spend those that next month or two trying to figure out where the hell we're going to put all these people. And so once they know, they send you the location, and then you turn up. You don't get to choose where exactly within that city the location is. You just have to turn up on the day, or to the location that they give you. So then you turn up. What's going to happen is there'll be a relatively small room compared to what we used to have. There might be 20 to 30 or 40 or 50 people in a room with computers. You'll give them your ID and your ticket. So you need to bring these with you. And then you'll file in, and you'll sit down. Now, again, expect delays, expect some tech issues. There probably won't be any, but if there are, you won't be shocked. Right? But again, sometimes people can't log in to their ASA portal to do the exam, or their login's not working, or that particular keyboard, the eye is not working, or whatever, right? But they have people there who will help you, who will move you to a different computer if needed, and they'll give you an extension in the time if required as well. Cool. So then you get 2 pieces of paper for Sections 1 and 3. So if you're going to use the paper, make sure you bring a pencil rather than a pen so you can rub it out. Or alternatively, you can bring in an A4-sized whiteboard and some markers so you can quickly rub out your working. So you can use that for sections 1 and 3 as well. When it comes to things like your wallet and your keys and your mobile phones, like you're going to need to turn those off, put them under your table or in your bag. There are a couple of rules that they have set up as to what you can bring and you can't. So where you can get more information on this is through the GAMSAT information booklet on page 17 for 2025. And we'll link that in the show notes. And also what we've got in the show notes is a checklist of all the things you need to bring. We've put in the essentials that you need to bring to actually get into the exam, like your ticket and your ID, but then also things you might want to bring along with you to make it more comfortable as well, which we'll talk about in a second. And you should go through this checklist the night before so to make sure that you're ready. But again, get that in the show notes. All right, so that's kind of the setup of section 1. So what are the components of it? Well, section 1 has 62 multiple choice questions and you get 100 minutes to answer them, right? So it's pretty fast. The stimulus material, the things they're going to ask you questions on can be anything from fiction passages to poetry to philosophy to cartoons to editorial pieces. And again, if you want some free resources on preparing for section 1, head over to the show notes. We've got that in there for you. But common pitfalls for section 1 are things like overanalyzing one of the passages and getting really caught up and running out of time for the other ones. But we won't go into the actual preparation for that section. You can head over to the show notes and get that over there. So that's section 1. I don't know how much else to say about that. But then when that's finished, you get a 30-minute break, right? You can go, they'll let you out of the room, you can go to the bathroom, and then you come in and you do section 3. Now, one thing to remember, and a bit of a tip here, is you can't control the temperature within the room. It could be hot, it could be cold, it could start hot, get cold, or the other way around. And the ASA adjudicators are notoriously insensitive to your needs, which understandably so. They got like 50 people. We used to have 2,000 people with these massive fans going, and they're bloody loud as well. So that you can bring things like disposable earplugs as well. So again, this is all in the checklist that we have for you. But yeah, so what I'm saying is that bring layers of clothes so that if you're hot, you can take off some layers. If you're cold, you can put some on. The other thing is make sure you pack a lunch for that lunch break. There probably won't be anything to eat around. If you're someone who likes to eat out for lunch, pack a lunch this day because you don't want to be running off, waiting in a line with everybody else and then getting your lunch late or not getting it at all and having to jam it in your face. Or it might not be something that actually sustains you or nourishes you or gives you energy for the science section, right? Because next up, after that 30-minute break, you come back and you've got the science section. So you're going to go back into that same room, into that same computer, log in. They'll get you, the time will start and you'll begin it. Same system, same as section 1. The way this section works is you get 75 multiple choice questions and you get 150 minutes to answer them. So about 2 minutes per question, which might seem like, that's better than section 1. It is, but it's still not much time with the amount of just sheer content you need to get through to answer those questions. They say that the topics or the general areas of interest that come up are biology. 40% of the exam will be in the context of biology. 40% will be in the context of chemistry, and 20% will be in the context of physics. And I say context of because they're not specifically asking you questions about the assumed knowledge. They're asking you questions about something completely different. And this is the crazy and amazing thing about Section 3 of the GAMSAT, where they say this is the assumed knowledge, but we're going to test you on something over here. And if that's kind of not making much sense to you or you want to know more about that, again, head over to our show notes where we have our GAMSAT Science Advantage resource that you can use. All right, and common pitfalls for Section 3 are things like running out of time, getting stuck on a particular question or on the calculations. Now, that's the other thing. You're not going to get a calculator. You can't bring a calculator to the GAMSAT. So you're going to need to do the calculations by hand. And again, you get those 2 pieces of paper for Section 3. All right. Or you can bring in your whiteboard. So make sure you're ready with that. You got to bring in your pencils. And again, there's a checklist in the show notes about this. Other kind of pitfalls is often what we find is that people who do the questions from start to finish in order, that's not the best way to go. Right? You need to use techniques like what we refer to as the QUE method, where you prioritize the units that have the most amount of questions. But there's a few different techniques, and you can learn more in the show notes. All right, but then that's section 3. And then once that wraps up, like you can't leave before the exam time's over. So if you finish before everyone, you can't leave. You need to hang around. Awesome. Now, if this was a live meetup, I'd ask if you have any questions at this point, but it's not. So if you do have any questions about what I'm covering here, go to our Facebook page called, same as this podcast, Nurses Doing GAMSAT. You can join and ask your questions there. But just to wrap it up, a few general tips. Make sure that you read page 17 of the info booklet. It has a breakdown of what might happen, kind of like a timesheet. We'll link that in the show notes. They provide clocks in the actual testing room, but you can bring a wristwatch, but it can't be a smartwatch, right? And it can't be hooked up to your phone or some things like that. It needs to be analog or digital and really simple. Again, use the demo platform, play around with that. Get out, we've got that checklist in the show notes. The other thing is expect to be tired in section 3. A lot of people come to us and they're like surprised that, hey, you know what? Halfway through section 3, I got really tired. It's going to happen, right? It's a long day. You're really concentrating. You're thinking, especially if you have a shitty lunch. If you have lots of carbohydrates for lunch, you're going to halfway or potentially even caffeine. Like you're halfway through section 3, your energy levels are going to dip. And you're going to feel terrible. So it's, the extent to which that happens can be controlled. Chances are, no matter who you are, you're still going to feel a bit tired. Halfway through section 3, that's normal. And, it actually is shorter now than it used to be. When back in my day, when we did it, it was like 180 questions. I can't remember now. It was a ridiculously long exam. Went for 3 hours, section 3. Right now it's for less than that. It's still tiring, so expect to get tired when you get there. Expect to have delays in getting started or getting out of the room because there's so many people, so many systems, things can go wrong. And the other thing is to plan your journey into the exam location the day before. Right, so make sure you know if you're going to drive. Make sure you know where you're going to park the car. Make sure you have the money to pay for parking. Make sure there is enough parking there. How are you going to get there? Give yourself enough time. If you're catching the train, make sure you give yourself enough time in case the train's late. Which train are you going to take? Where are you going to walk? Make sure you know all of that the day before. You're not figuring it out on the morning of or as on the way there. All right. I think that's about it. I've covered the different, the 3 sections of the exam, the 2 separate sittings, how they're different, how they work, what you can expect to come up, how to kind of start to prepare for yourself for the day. And again, if you want more details, we have them in the show notes. And if you have any questions, go to to our Facebook group to ask them or answer them in there. But that's it from me today, and I'll see you guys next time.
Hey, I have a cool gift for you, just for listening to the Nurses Doing GAMSAT podcast. We do some of our best work in our Facebook group called, you guessed it, Nurses Doing GAMSAT. It's free to join, and every day we're sharing actionable guides, tips and tricks, and really just how to smash the exam and get into medicine. You can join today by searching Nurses Doing GAMSAT on Facebook. Thanks for listening to another episode, and I'll see you next time.